Coogs House. All right, football practice starts today. Hope you got some questions because I got 6 of them. Let's jump in.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs Daily Podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. We are approaching that 750 subscriber mark. So remember, when we get there, we're going to be giving away the Galen Robinson designed Letterman jacket. It's a size extra large. So to make sure we get there, make sure you subscribe and like and comment the video. We're going to be giving it out to someone who comments. If after talking about spring football practice, you got nothing else to say, tell us what your favorite superpower would be. All right, so speaking of superheroes and superpowers, we're going to be talking all about spring football today because practice does start today. We'll be talking some about the QB battle and the running back room in the first segment. Second segment, kind of switching into offensive coaching and wide receiver formations and who's on the depth chart where and how all that blends together. And then the third segment, look at some of the defensive stuff because, frankly, that's even more vague, and like the questions then have to be even more vague. But in this first segment, let's talk some about the quarterback battle. Yes, I'm talking about Donovan Smith and Lucas Coley, the two guys coming in fighting for the spot to replace quarterback Clayton Tune as he is spending the week at the NFL Combine trying to make a bunch of money next year. With all of that said, I think we need to make sure we lay out the two guys. Now, when Donovan Smith transferred in just a couple months ago at this point from Texas Tech. We did a little bit of a preview on him. That is linked in the description. So if you go back and check out the initial reaction to that, I'm obviously somewhat of a fan of him, if you can't tell by that initial video. But he is 6'5", 240. I will say he looks a little bit slimmer than that. When you watch him run and things, he is a true running quarterback, 3-star athlete out of high school, was a wide receiver for most of his high school career at the heralded Bishop Gorman program in Las Vegas, Nevada. He then went to a small town outside of Lubbock to go to Friendship High School in Wolfforth, Texas. His father was coaching on the Texas Tech staff at that point, so he was obviously there at that place. That's where he got his first real run at quarterback. Tech used him as a starter when guys were injured. A little bit at the start of the season, he started games, including against Houston, where he beat Houston. And you got to see him a little bit more as the year went on, as more of a Wildcat guy once he got demoted. Lucas Coley comes in from Arkansas. He is a San Antonio product, a private school kid, Cornerstone Christian, if I'm reading my notes here correctly. My handwriting's not the greatest. But he is also a dual threat quarterback. He was a 3-star dual threat quarterback. So Smith was a 3-star athlete. Coley's 3-star dual threat quarterback. He's more like 6'1", 220. I thought it was interesting that he transferred in last spring at the end of spring ball from Arkansas. So he came in from Arkansas, had the SEC offer, wanted to come to Houston, get back closer at home, and Houston moving in the Big 12 next season. So we knew after a year behind Clayton Tune, he could come play some Big 12 football, a big time competition between them. We also talked about Indy Wijay, who we mentioned a few weeks ago back. At this point, he's going to be looking like he's coming in from Pasadena, California. I don't know if he's going to be aiming to compete to start this year by any stretch. He has some growing to do, but some nice natural tools. And so it looks like it's going to be coming down between Smith and Coley for now. And I say for now because in his media availability on Monday, Dana Holgorsen was really quick to point out that at the end of the day, they have a fourth spot in their room to add a fourth quarterback. And if the right person, the right fit for the culture and team were to pop up in May or in April and May in that availability, they would take someone to add to the competition. Competition is what everyone's pushing for here. And he wants it to be the extreme thing that lifts Holgorsen, that is, wants it to lift everyone's level of play. Now, Holgorsen also said at this point, it looks like Coley is ahead of Smith. So I imagine that means Coley gets first team reps. It's his second year in the program, second year in the system. And so theoretically, he's going to be kind of more comfortable calling a huddle, more comfortable doing all the different ins and outs, the minutia of being a quarterback. I do think they're going to give both guys a real fair shot at this, though. I don't think Donovan Smith would have come, frankly, if he didn't have that real shot. He could have been a bench quarterback in the Big 12 where he was. I think big differences between the two are Donovan Smith. Again, he's listed 6'5", 240. He looks on film and stuff like that closer to like 225, 230, but he may, put on some good weight. And he runs like he's bigger than the 240. Like I noted it when watching him run, he runs stronger than he looks, and then he weighs in at 240. Like, oh, maybe he actually runs like he's 240, right? Coley has a little bit more wiggle in his get up, but admittedly, I'm having to watch his high school tape because he didn't get in the field a whole lot at Arkansas, and he didn't get to show off the wheels a whole lot when he was at Houston last season. As far as where they throw the ball best, I actually think Smith throws a better ball between the hashes. Coley has a pretty good job at finding the pockets along the sideline, which you kind of wish you could put both guys together in that aspect. Coley, again, I'm watching a lot of high school tape, but I think he really, really likes the deep ball. He had a couple of really talented receivers in San Antonio. Worth pointing out, Coley also, if you want to go back and watch, like, talking about watching old tape, he was on Friday Night Tykes. Why didn't no one tell me this? Really, really funny to watch those old shows. Shout out to Kevin Smith, who's on the Yoakum Outlaws as well. Love you, cuz. So what I will say is that the other thing here is that if he throws those deep balls well, I worry about him going at the middle of the field where the defense is, because Big 12 defenses will be fast and all those things, right? Donovan Smith, we saw put the ball in the middle field pretty well last year. He put a lot of zip on it, a little bit more of a sidearm release. He's really, really spin it into the middle pretty well. Both options work well in this RPO kind of game that their legs build them for. The one downfall to Smith is that so positives. Last season, at one point, he led the Big 12 in attempts, completions, yards, and touchdowns. The negative is he also led the Big 12 in turnovers. And so that's why he didn't stick as a starter there. You hope that with, guru like Dana Holgorsen would hold himself up to be, that maybe you don't have to worry about those kinds of things, or you might think you can coach those out of that kind of a guy. Mike Burchett is also the quarterback coach. We're going to get the coaching stuff later, but, as a up-and-coming quarterback coach, is he the kind of guy that maybe can help work some of that stuff out of him, relate to him as a young guy and those kinds of things? We shall see. I did like that Donovan Smith, even though he did turn the ball over a lot for my liking, and he is a lot for my liking, I do like that he's really, really quick in his decisions. Lucas Coley, however, I want to see how he adjusts to full-speed football. We haven't seen him play a lot of full-speed football in a long time, and that would be what I look at there. We're following this fairly closely throughout all of spring ball, and obviously the spring game happens on April 7th. But I want to reiterate that this does appear to be a real competition, and Coley will take the first snaps. Quickly, before we run out of time in the first segment, I do want to talk a little bit about the running back room, because I don't know how realistic of a look we're going to get at it, so I don't know how much time to really spend on it. We heard that Campbell, I just lost my page here. We did hear that Brandon Campbell will be out until the summer with what appears to be a shoulder injury. Didn't hear a whole lot more outside of it than that, but he won't be competing. Alt McCaskill, who had a fantastic, set the freshman touchdown rushing record in 2021 for the University of Houston. He missed all of 2022 with an ACL injury. He will still be limited in the spring practices. Obviously, we know we got there. But I do think it's interesting that both of those guys I would think would be competing for starter snaps. Stacey Sneed, I liked a lot last year. He was more of a quick guy, a quick back. He, I think, will take a lot of the reps in the spring practices. As far as running backs go, you've also got Kalon Walker and Maurice Reed, and that'll be kind of how the spring practices go. Maurice Reed's a transfer from D3 Austin College, 5'10", buck 85. I think just a work-hard kid. I don't know how realistic it is that he can get in the starting rotation with so many guys in the running back room, right? I think it's just going to be a lot of the Snead show as far as high-end runs go in spring practice. That said, we did find out early that we have some big-time track stars coming into Houston at the running back position that are running track in high school currently. Will they be able to compete next season? I'm not so sure, but we will see if Parker Jenkins out of Klein Forest, who is running really, really fast 100 times if you're a track guy, will he come in and compete for some of that speed back type of run early on? Rashawn Sanford out of Harker Heights, like 5'9", 170, got a lot of wiggle in football, also apparently has a decent track speed, track numbers, right? And so where do those things kind of go? And I don't know what the correct answer to that is, but I do know that I don't feel like we will have that answer at the end of spring ball. So if that is one of your questions, that's one of my questions like a week ago until we found out more about injuries and things like that. That's one of your questions. I don't think you and I are going to get those answers quite yet. If you are looking for an answer, though, and you have a New Year's resolution to keep up with, let's talk a little bit about Built Bar. Now, Built Bar is one of the best, most delicious treats without all the fat and calories. We just got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat a little bit healthier this year. Trust me, I know it doesn't quite look like it, but I really am. If you're like me and you want to eat healthier but don't want to compromise taste, then I've got the thing for you. You got to try Built. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious, you won't think they're good for you. Perfect for your New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they are healthy. Most bars are just 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. You don't need to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about getting your order at Built.com, but now you can go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club. That's right. Head to your nearest Walmart today, walk to the pharmacy section, and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. If you're close to a Sam's Club, you can run and grab a 13-bar box with hit flavors like brownie, batter, and churro. Thank me later. I'm going to recommend that coconut almond. You and I talk about this all the time, and I'm telling you, it tastes like an almond joy. All right, so my second series of questions were more about the coaching staff, schematics, and things like that. Obviously, Houston is waving goodbye to Shannon Dawson. That was a notable, as we did a whole little bit on that a couple weeks ago. He's heading to the University of Miami. And one of the questions that that coach was asked on Monday's availability before spring practices started on Tuesday was how will that impact play calling? Obviously, coach was complimentary of Shannon and told the everyone listening that he's got the best opportunity in front of him, all those kinds of things. And I don't mean to say like it sounded cheesy. I just mean like, of course he did, right? Holgorsen mentioned that he will be heavily involved in play calling. He also mentioned quarterback coach Mike Burchett could also be involved. Burchett will be up in the box above looking down, and the way they work back and forth will be interesting to watch. Nyagavi will be running the run game still. He will not be promoted to straight up offensive coordinator quite yet, it doesn't sound like. And so what I could see happening is some conglomeration of Holgorsen and Burchett calling plays. Sounds like it may be up to Holgorsen to signal them in or get them in. And then with any run kind of situation, hey, it's 3rd and 2, we need a run play. That's when they call up Nyagavi for the run. As far as those kinds of things go, it was interesting that like Holgorsen didn't seem that upset about any of it on Monday and mentioned that like Holgorsen himself is so involved in the offense that they don't feel, quote, I believe was jammed up with him leaving, with Dawson leaving, right? So I think that they feel comfortable with where things are going with that. At least they look to like they feel more comfortable than I am with where things are going with that. Not, we'll figure that out as we go. We'll see how the spring game goes. I don't know if we'll be able to see that in spring practice yet. What we'll see at spring practice, though, is Houston is bringing 8 offensive linemen back and adding transferred Jalen Garth. Jalen Garth, obviously, remember, transferred in from UT Austin at the start of last season, but was not cleared to play in the fall of 2022. That's a lot of returning beef up front, and that is a good thing as Houston heads into the Big 12. One of the biggest jumps you're going to see in going from American Athletic Conference play to the Big 12, it's really twofold. One, it's the big fellas, right? The bigger guys are bigger and stronger and faster. That's just the way Power 5 football rolls. And frankly, that's kind of why, Houston is so dead set on bringing these guys back and continuing to develop them. And I'm sure we'll look for some disgruntled giants in the next transfer portal. But also, you'll notice the depth of a lot of guys. So like their other teams' 2nd and 3rd and 4th wide receiver option will all be as fast as a number 1 wide receiver option might have been across most of the American Athletic Conference. So the drop-off in depth won't quite be there. I think Houston looks like they're building kind of towards both of those things. It'll be interesting to see how this offensive line group with Patrick Paul and all those guys, like how do those guys translate into with using their experience where they're not quite the size. Paul is pretty big, but not quite the size of a typical Power 5 offensive line. Does their experience and playing together for so long help that? Also, we've seen Nyagavi do great work in his first year at Tulane last year, or even go further back down his coaching resume as an offensive line coach. Really great at getting guys to get rid of penalties. And for the most penalized team in college football last year, that's really, really important. So what does his impact look like on the team? And frankly, I'm interested to see, because I'm kind of an X's and O's sicko, when you see Nyagavi take those first, reps at practice or run those first reps of run plays at practice. Like we called it 9-on-7. We had like inside run period, right? In those kinds of periods, when do you see like going to more of a traditional zone set instead of block down, kick out kind of stuff? Or do you see quarterback powers happening because the two quarterbacks you got behind it now, as opposed to Clayton Tune a year ago, right? Holgorsen's real quick to say that he doesn't want to run guys in the ground just to run them into the ground, but he is open to running the quarterback more next season because that's where these kids' talents are. And so what does that look like? The other thing about what this looks like takes me to my next question in formations and X's and O's and those kinds of things on offense. And that is, what kind of personnel will Houston spend most of their time in? Nyagavi is more of an 11 and 12 personnel guy. He's got a tight end and an H-back or a pair of H-backs back there that are more blocking type bodies. Houston has always had, under Holgorsen, both this time and when he came as an offensive coordinator, a bunch of speed at receiver, right? And so what does it look like when you've got all that wide receiver talent and only 3 of them on the field a lot of the time, right? Obviously, Matthew Golden, he set the receiving touchdown record for the U of H last season. He'll be returning for his sophomore campaign, and I'm assuming we'll draw a double team every time he steps on the field now that Tank Dell is not around, right? Tank Dell also at the NFL Combine this week trying to make a bunch of money next fall. Best of luck to you, Tank. Hope it's an early draft pick. I think he's got a real shot, guys. I think he's got a real shot. But on top of Matthew Golden returning, you also bring back Sam Brown and Joseph Manjack. Those are 3 guys that I think all, if you'd ask them today, anticipate like having big roles in the offense next year because Tank Dell stepped away. Makes total sense. But you also have Mikal Harrison-Pilot, one of the highest ranked recruits to ever come to the University of Houston. And while he was dubbed an athlete on every single recruiting board, he most notably fits in as a route running pass catcher, right? Could he do some wildcat quarterback? Yes. Could he come downhill from the box as a safety? Sure. Could he lock up the other team's best guy as a corner? Yeah. But he's such a natural, crisp route runner in and out of breaks, on his toes the whole time. But in a weird way that he can also get his cleats in the ground, make a cut, plant in full speed out of the breaks. Really talented guy getting open to get the football. I think he has to also play receiver. And then suddenly you're looking at like, oh man, like that's 4 guys that all need to play a bunch of snaps of wideout. And you haven't even mentioned the other transfer guys, right? Josh Cobbs comes in. He's coming in from Wyoming, right? He was a big possession type guy, 6'4", 200, big receiver. You got to find ways for him to get in the game, or can he play that tight end H-back spot for Nyagavi, right? You also may make sure I got the guy's name right. You've got Stephon Johnson. I always want to say Stephon Johnson coming in. He's a 6'2", 185, and he's more of a deep threat kind of guy. I don't mean to say he can't get the intricacies of the in and out kind of routes and stuff, but he is a deep threat kind of guy. And so what do you do to get them the ball without taking stuff away from your other receivers? And are you limiting yourself in being an 11 and 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends, right? 1 running back, 1 tight end, like 11, 1 and 1, 12, 1 and 2. If you're limiting yourself in those instances, how do you make sure you get these guys on the field and get the ball? And if someone's getting squeezed out, who is it? Because I don't think you redshirt Mikal. I could see you redshirting other freshmen, and they've got other freshmen coming in that will do like Jacoby Banks is going to be a great Big 12 receiver. I think the room is so busy, I could see him getting redshirted just to maximize his time on campus, right? Nothing against the kid. He's from Fort Bend Marshall. Talented kid, one of the city's best. The room's busy. I bet he gets redshirted. We'll see. Maybe he can take some snaps away from somebody else, and who knows? But the room is so busy. who knows? If someone's going to get squeezed out, where did that come from? Are the guys able to like all share the rock and like he gets 5 targets, he gets 5 targets, he gets 5 targets, as opposed to anyone getting 10 targets? We'll see. We also just got to see how they get on the field all at the same time and what it looks like them on the field in spring practice. In the third segment, I did say I wanted to talk defense. So let's talk about some defense. Obviously, the D-line has been the core of the defense for the bulk of this Dana Holgorsen run. Sack Avenue, it's a real thing. Frankly, for all the faults in the defense last year, Pro Football Focus, analytics, everywhere across the board ranked the defensive line very, very high because they were very high performing. Now, could they get, if you got past the D-line, it felt like you scored a touchdown. It certainly felt that way in the SMU game. Don Nwanko and Cesar Nelson are back and frankly had such big years last year. I'm sure they're looking to kind of solidify their future pro status by playing that well again in the Big 12. Frankly, they're set up to be kind of the stars of next season. But in that D-line room, they never really replaced Derek Parrish a year ago, and they've got to find a way to replace him now. They also have to find a way to replace DeAnthony Jones, who is going to take his turn at trying out for the NFL as well. He is not at the combine notably right now, but he will be at Pro Day and will be trying out and will be attempting to be drafted. I think he's a 3rd, 4th round pick. We'll see. Not for this episode, right? But all of that is to say that they had trouble replacing Parrish a year ago. They still have to do it. And they got to do it while replacing Anthony Jones. So I look to the transfer window for big fellas, especially in moving into Power 5 football. And the first thing that jumps off the board to me is Jalen Hunt. His most recent height and weight I've seen across the board. Let's pull it to make sure we got the U of H official. But I feel like what's interesting here is he started off college at like 6'3", 240, right? And then when you pull up Jalen Hunt more recently, where'd he go? Too many of these guys. He's at more like 320, right? Like somewhere in the middle there will probably be where he is come next fall. However, in doing all of that, I don't know if he's a 3 technique, a nose tackle, or an edge guy. He started off college as an edge guy. He played some on the inside. I wonder with Don Nwanko there as he move out to that 3 tech, where does he end up flowing into the defensive line, right? I think a big body like that, though, will be ready for Big 12 play, and thus you'll be able to see him pretty quickly and pretty early on. The other guys I think is worth pointing out, you got Ish Harris coming in from Oklahoma. He's going to move down and put his hand more in the dirt more often, I should say. At Oklahoma, he played more of a linebacker. Now, I don't mean to – I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong guy. I'm on Ish Harris is coming from A&M. Same position. I just got the school wrong. Coming down to put his hand in the dirt. He's more of an edge guy at A&M. He had a lot more traditional linebacker play at U of H. He's going to come down and be an edge rusher. I could see him being the weaker side defensive end, more of a pass rush specialist opposite Nelson Caesar. He was a 4-star kid at a Pilot Point, Texas, way up north, almost in Oklahoma. He's long armed, 6'3". I could see him being a really effective pass rusher early on. And frankly, when you're translating it, into transferring into the Big 12, again, you want some, strength up front. You want to have the right kind of big guys. He's the pass rushing big guy. David Gwegbu, who is the Oklahoma transfer I was thinking of when I got my schools backward, from Katy, Texas originally, is transferring back home to U of H, and he is also coming down to put his hand in the dirt more often. He had a lot more of a career at Oklahoma. He's a 6'4", 6'5", 250, 260 range kind of guy, depending on what measurements you're looking at. And I could see him kind of being a versatile 3 tech, 5 tech, 9 tech, a bunch of different positions along the edges of the defensive line. I could see him coming in to spell Caesar. I could see him coming in to spell on the weak side. I could see him coming in to spell at the 3 technique in a pass down situation. Got linebacker speed down there coming off the edge. Can those guys that transferred in replace Parrish, replace Anthony Jones? I think so. They just look a lot different, right? Parrish was built like a brick house, right? None of these guys quite have that. They got a little bit more speed, a little more wiggle, a little better hands. But Parrish, being a brick house, has his jersey in the Texas College or the National College Football Hall of Fame because of performances like he did against Texas Tech last fall, right? Like he is a really, really good pass rusher that will also build stop the run. And so, what does Houston look like without all this? Without all of that, I should say. We'll see. There are other questions to be said about the defense. Obviously, Belk's defense was kind of under a lot of fire last year after giving up 77 points to SMU, and they gave a lot of points to Temple and a lot of points early on the season to Rice, and they got run all over by every time they played a running quarterback, and whether it was Kansas or Tulsa, right? Like rushing quarterbacks gave them a problem, and they're not going away in the Big 12. And so, how do you do that? Worth pointing out, it sounds like Malik Robinson is going to be back. We'll look at any other guys that are back and active from injured reserve. Didn't get as many of those defensive side of the ball questions and media availability. They look like several of them are online working out when you watch like the workout clips and all those kinds of the clips that go viral, make a little hyped to go work out. And then by the time you get to the gym, you're like, energy's died. Yeah, those clips, lots of guys that would have been on the IR last season are in those clips working out. But whether or not they have their helmets and shoulder pads on this week will remain to be seen. The biggest, I think, interesting thing that Holgorsen said about the defense and its availability on Monday that makes me wonder something is he talks about moving Hiplight into the linebacker room, getting down close to the line of scrimmage and putting him in the box. What I wonder is if we're looking at more of a 4-2-5 kind of down the box. Like, is he really just a down safety? Is he getting more in between the tackles down the box and more plugging holes as a linebacker? What are they doing? And then, frankly, with how much they have to replace on the back half of the defense, what are they going to do to replace him? I mean, Hassan Hippolyte is a senior, so I would imagine he knows the defense in a way that can orchestrate and like get people in the right spots as a linebacker of sorts. Yes, I was just surprised to hear the guy that's like 5'10 and change and 215-ish is going to be down the box that much more. But Coach talked about condensing his space, getting close to line of scrimmage, and I will say that it'll be interesting to see how that goes. As far as other DBs go, Adari Halsey is the transfer in from New Mexico. How does he fit in? Where does he fit in? He went from Fort Bend Marshall, got the 1 year in New Mexico, and lit it up, right? This could be a great coming home story for him in a lot of ways. 6 foot, 215, runs well, follows the hit well, tracks the ball well. Could be a cool story to tell once he goes off as Houston goes in the Big 12 next season. I am excited to watch him in one-on-ones against guys like Matthew Golden, same age, same everything, right? Both from Houston. Really, really fun way to go about it. And like, it'll be interesting to see how he plays in the spring. Lots of questions and not a whole lot of answers as we go into spring ball, but we're hoping to answer them literally later today, right? So if you are tracking spring football or want to talk about spring football or want to talk about Cougar basketball, the Houston Rock, we can talk about the Rockets, they're kind of depressing, the Astros, the Texans, and which of these former Cougars they may end up drafting come late April. I'm happy to talk about all those things at Painsworth 512. That's at PAINSWORT. That's Painsworth 512. That's PAINSWORTH 512 on Twitter, Instagram, and all of your various social media handles. Thank you so much for tuning into the show today. Remember, you can find us each and every morning at Locked On Cougs, wherever you get your podcast. That's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. We appreciate you subscribing, liking, giving us a thumbs up, commenting on the video, telling us what you thought or what other questions you had about spring ball as well. Remember, at 7:50, we're giving away a jacket to some lucky subscriber that is commenting on videos. Thank you so much for making it through the show today. If you're looking for a second listen of the day, I'm going to recommend Locked On Big 12. Josh does a great job of talking about the conference expansion, the ever-changing college sports landscape, and he does it from the lens of the conference that we're all practicing to be in literally today. There's a cool YouTube, or not the cool Twitter and Instagram clip of them stitching the Big 12 logo on the jerseys. Yeah, those jerseys are because we're in that conference, and he's talking all about it all the time. So go check out Josh as well. Thank you so much for being Locked On Cougs, your first listen today. Locked On Cougs is a proud member of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.